You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Tuesday, December 4th, 2018. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are diving into Advent. We're talking about what Advent means, and then we're going to start talking our way through the Jesse tree. But before we do that, we have a couple more things to talk about. Today, we are going to talk about the Advent wreath. Do you have an Advent wreath set up in your house or your school or your church? All of those places are great places to have an Advent wreath. Now, oftentimes we pull these out every year, but we don't necessarily think much about why we have an Advent wreath or what it means. So let's do that right now. So first of all, the first thing to notice about a wreath is that it is round. There's no place that you can say is the beginning or the end of the wreath. It just goes on and on. It's eternal, much like God. So that's why we think of a circle unending without beginning like God. Also, there are 4 candles on the Advent wreath, and sometimes there's even a 5th candle in the middle of the Advent wreath. Do you know what those candles stand for? Well, they stand for each week of Advent. We light another candle every Sunday. So right now, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, December 4th, then you should have just 1 candle lit because we are still in the first week of Advent and we won't light another candle until Sunday. Now, this wreath with 4 candles is not just a countdown to Christmas. It is much more beautiful and symbolic than that. Here is what it symbolizes. When we fall into sin, when we choose not to follow God, to turn our back on Him, then we live a life that is very dark. It is full of darkness. And that is what we are symbolizing in our wreath. At night, when we light just that first candle, it's completely dark, but there's a little light. And then each week, as we move closer to Christmas, and as we move through our Jesse tree and learn more about the prophets that came, the signs that God sent, there's a little bit more light all the time. And then finally, on Christmas, when we light that center candle, the candle for Christmas, then it is almost as if darkness has been completely dispelled, that God has come into the world, that He has defeated the darkness of sin, and He has saved us. So that is what the candles represent on our Advent wreath. We slowly light one more as we wait for Jesus just as the Israelites waited for Jesus for hundreds of years. And so, Sprouts, here is my challenge for you. I know life is busy and maybe your parents haven't gotten the Advent wreath set up. That's fine. There's no problem. But I want you to take it upon yourself to try to make a wreath or put your wreath together so that you can start using it and start lighting those candles. If you already have your wreath set up, that's wonderful. I challenge you to make it a nightly prayer where you gather around the wreath, light the candles, and wait and pray. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. One final word to the grown-ups. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. I would like to invite you to join a special Facebook group just for those that listen to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. We will use this group to connect, to share resources around that week's theme, and simply celebrate raising future saints. To find the direct link to the Facebook group, simply check the notes for this podcast episode.